Welcome to another episode of This Is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast, your safe space to discuss sports, politics, social issues, and even religion, where we will take it all very seriously, but not too seriously. Season 3, Episode 33, there's some sort of symbolism in that, right? 3 threes? What do we have on tap? What is greed, dear listener? Who is greedy? Isn't this just more of the same? When are we going to get enough? And it's a very exciting time to be a sports fan in the Valley of the Sun. Thank you all for listening. I do appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, thumbs up, write reviews, circulate on the social medias. This Is Why I Don't Vote is on Patreon. If you like what you hear, please support.
Act 1. What is greed? Who is greedy? Isn't this just more of the same?
What is greed? What does that even mean? I might be the only one who finds this juxtaposition curious. We have a government shutdown looming, and I'm not going to get into all the reasons why it is looming, but we have a government shutdown looming in the beginning of October. A government shutdown is usually a precursor to there being an economic downturn. The markets drop precipitously. There's all sorts of different recessionary impacts on different segments of society. Again, I believe it was 10 years ago, in 2013, there was the government shutdown that led to the stock market having some massive sell-off, and there being all sorts of different recessionary problems in the economy for, 6 to 12 months? Here we are again. We're going to do it all over again. Now, why do I bring that up? I bring that up in light of a couple of other stories which I find comedic. Is that the right word? Baffling? That might be the right word. Absurd? That might be the right word. Think about this, dear listener. You are in a climate where the president of a foreign country is coming over to this country to solicit this country to give that other country more money after we've spent billions and billions and billions of dollars to create the kind of quagmire that all of our political leaders told us that we wanted to avoid when we started giving that other country billions and billions and billions of dollars. And we're going to do that in light of the fact that the government itself is threatening to shut down, that this solicitation is coming to the American government and the American people at the same time that the government is about to shut down. Within the same week that that story populates, we get this story about the workers for a particular industry going on strike, and there's a lot of teeth gnashing about that in the media. What's interesting is that the public reaction has been generally in favor of those workers when in the social medias, in the social media landscape that we live in today, it's been widely circulated that the industry in which these workers have enriched, that's probably the best word, the industry that these workers have enriched, and that sounds like, even coming out of my mouth, that I'm somehow siding with the workers. But the information, and yes, I did mean to use the word but intentionally, the information is staggering that in this industry, over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, the stock buybacks have been in the hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. And none of us has to be that sophisticated a market actor to understand that if you've got hundreds of billions of dollars on hand, and instead of reinvesting it in your workforce or reinvesting it in your technology, reinvesting it in your product, you simply take the money and buy back stock in order to make the stock that is out there, is in circulation, that much more valuable. And then another story drops where there's a senator from a certain state that has been getting bribed for at least the last 8 years. I can't believe this guy didn't get convicted in his last bribery trial. That's right. A sitting U.S. senator has had a bribery trial in the last 10 years. And during his tenure, he had a bribery trial. He was acquitted not because he was acquitted. He was acquitted because there was a hung jury and the prosecution just said, meh, we're not going to continue to pursue this. So in a pseudo de facto way, that's an acquittal. We're just not going to try anymore. And then that senator gets appointed to the chair of the Foreign Relations Committee, where he has the opportunity to accept more bribes. And it turns out that one of the main benefactors of this particular senator happened to be a country that we were giving a ton of money to in arms, in foreign aid. And you might think to yourself, hey, didn't you just a second ago in introducing this piece, this segment, talk about a foreign dignitary, a foreign president that was coming over to this country to solicit more money from the United States after having already received hundreds of billions of dollars in assistance? Yes. Yes, dear listener, is it all coming together? This is absurdity. This is literal absurdity. It's almost too spectacular and fantastic to believe it to be the truth. That somehow we're faced, and that's how it's presented to us, that we're faced with problems in this country. And here we are, we're pouring money out to foreign powers. There has to be, and in the case of a certain particular senator, it's been now alleged, there has to be some sort of corrupt influence on these people, because we're just pouring money out to these foreign powers to do what? Are they really serving the American public's interest? Are they really even serving the American government's interest? And then you see an organization with a bunch of workers saying, hey, we're going on strike because you've made billions and billions of dollars over the course of just a few years where we took concessions just to keep the shop open, just to keep the place going so that product could go in, product could go out, and we've reaped none of those rewards. And somehow, in light of that, that the people that are asking for their share are greedy, that they want too much. What is greed? What does it even mean? One person's greed is another person's entrepreneurship, I suppose. You're looking at the greed involved in shutting down the government and what kind of attention and what kind of independent economic circumstances that can create for some people. You're looking at somebody coming over to this country after having gotten billions and billions of dollars, when those billions of dollars could have very well been spent in this country, billions and billions of dollars in weapons, which we're finding out have been sloppily, if not slovenly, just plastered all across the landscape of this war zone, often to the chagrin of the military leaders in the United States that are helping advise this one power. We have a senator that is taking gold bars from a foreign power in order to influence billions of dollars going to that foreign power, whether that be in foreign aid or whether in military assistance. Sure, there's an industry that's on strike now, but we've seen it over and over again, and I've spoken to this, someone who has traditionally thought that unions were inherently evil, or that at least in their current incarnation were completely corrupt and no longer serving the purposes of the workers. Look at how much things have changed. So I ask you, dear listener, who's greedy? What does greedy mean? Where do you even derive judgment in light of all of this to say these people are greedy and these people are hardworking? These people are nefarious and these people are altruistic. Somebody is deserving and somebody is culpable. You're probably waiting for me to go in some sort of direction on this piece, and here it is. Everything is fine. We couldn't be luckier or more fortunate human beings in this day and age. Every single generation of human beings that has ever existed has aspired to live not only in this day and age, but in this country, in the United States of America. And you want to know how I know all of this to be the truth? Look at the spoils of war that is having been born in the United States of America. We decry the lack of fiscal responsibility and see in our government, in our industry, in our own personal lives, no one practicing it. Selfishly, from a podcast standpoint, as far as marketing and promotion, I wanted to go in and do individual pieces on each of these stories. I wanted to talk about Zelensky being over here, trying to get more money out of President Biden and out of these DC politicians and bureaucrats, in light of, within the same week, the government likely shutting down, thereby causing an even greater recession to the extent that we're in one, if not market crash, because it's such a foolhardy thing to do for the government to shut down. You've got the UAW auto strike with the big three American automakers. You've got this senator from New Jersey, Bob Menendez, that's taking bribes. I mean, in the most laughable kind of Donald Trump way. I mean, is that not Trumpian that you would accept a bribe in gold bars? And for what? For influence on continuing foreign aid and military support into Egypt? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to feign outrage? I'm not outraged anymore. It's so ludicrous, it's so absurd, and it's so routine that I can't help but look at myself. You know, what am I doing? What am I thinking? What kind of reality am I creating that this exists? That this is the state of affairs in the country that I live in this day and age? Is it apathy? Is it that I'm just as greedy as all of these other people and my greed manifests itself in a different way? And although I can sit in judgment of that greed outside of me, I'm really just denying that shadow self, that greedy bastard that is me. Am I supposed to be offended in any way, whether or not I affiliate with conservatives or liberals, Republicans or Democrats, that Donald Trump, someone who's indicted for all of these different criminal activities, is basically neck and neck in an election that's going to take place in but 1 year with the current sitting president, Joe Biden, that these are the candidates that we have in order to lead our country out of what we, I guess, perceive is some sort of problem, is some sort of dire set of circumstances. Maybe we need to just take the veil off, realize, if not recognize is probably the better word, but there is a realization, then the recognition, because you realize something and then the recognition is, I'm going to act in accord with what I have now realized. And the realization is there anything wrong? Are there any problems at all? This podcast is published on Saturdays. There's plenty of good college football games on. The weather, given the time of year, will generally be nice, pretty much all throughout the country. The echo chamber that is your social media feed will give you all of the different little morsels of entertainment that you need to get you through your day, particularly when you're having to watch commercials during those college football games. My reaction to all of this is no longer as much indifference as it's just embracing the fact that this is a reflection of us and that things are much better than we give them credit for. Now, do I wish that we would direct some of the money that we're pouring outside of this country into other foreign countries, whether that be Ukraine or Egypt or Saudi Arabia? Do I wish we'd spend some of that money here? Sure. I certainly do. Do I wish that industry was more conscientious of how stupid it looks to, in the short term, continue to execute these stock buybacks to artificially inflate their stock prices so that they could have a few extra dollars in their pocket, not realizing that A, we're in a different media climate where the legacy media might be on your side, but no one watches the legacy media anymore. So social media certainly isn't going to let you get away with it. And B, it actually, in the long run, hurts industry because it invites regulation. It invites oversight, and the same idiots that are taking gold bars from foreign dignitaries in other countries or allowing a foreign president to bilk our country out of practically all of its weapons and hundreds of billions of dollars. These aren't the people that you want creating the regulatory oversight of industry. Yes, I want to see all of that change, and I'm going to be that change. And you know how I start by being that change? Is I get on this podcast and I do a segment about how absurd this all is, that I'm not going to get mad and comment on all of it and try to, in anger or in judgment, indict anyone else. It's all happening for the best. How does this nation evolve into its next iteration? It's this type of lunacy. It's this type of absurdity. It's all for our greater good. And to that end, I will not judge anyone for sitting in anger or sitting in judgment and indicting any of these people. I will try to be as sympathetic to that energy as possible, as perhaps they're new to this. I'm looking at myself and I'm thinking, you got upset about these things in 1993, in 1995, in 2002, and you're still going to do it? I mean, what's changed? Has anything substantially changed that would warrant me getting so animated, trying to quote-unquote express myself in anger, as I did just 2-3 short years ago on this very podcast? It's all the same. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, I might be a lot of things, dear listener, and those adjectives, some of those superlatives, some of those substandard, many an adjective describes me, but unaware, no. Insane, hell no. I see it for what it is, dear listener. I hope you see it for what it is as well, and let's not participate in that vibration, in that frequency, in that energy. Don't think that because it's at the end of the episode on a Friday afternoon that this soap opera is somehow going to have some sort of resolution, and that resolution is somehow going to be satisfactory. The greed goes on and on. It's not even worth paying attention to if you decide not to participate.
Act 2 exciting times for sports fans in the Valley of the Sun.
Exciting times for sports fans in the Valley of the Sun. The Arizona Cardinals upset the Dallas Cowboys at home last Sunday. That would be don't make me do math, the 24th. Shout out to Josh Dobbs, who led the Arizona Cardinals in that victory against the Dallas Cowboys. I'd like to give him as much props as I can because he stuck around in Pittsburgh for a long time. He's floated around, and yes, but for an injury, he would not be starting in a football game. Yet there was an injury, and he is starting, and he's playing pretty well. Then, this week, the Arizona Diamondbacks make their push for a playoff spot, a team that most pundits pick to finish dead last in the NL West. And I'm not really a sports pundit. I'm certainly not getting paid to make any kind of prediction over a baseball team. I picked them dead last in the division as well. Thankfully, the kids proved me wrong. The Arizona Diamondbacks are a competent baseball team. They go out, they play offense, they play defense. They have pitching. They have relievers. It's a fun team to watch, and I'm excited for them to make the playoffs this year, as I would like to attend a playoff game. Yes, I am going to attend the game on Friday night, so this podcast being published on Saturday morning, I will have already attended that game. It is against the Houston Astros, a game in which hopefully the Diamondbacks are going to have, by that time, the playoff spot clinched. Mathematically, I believe that it's possible if the Marlins continue to lose and they're playing the New York Metropolitans. So I've got a double reason to see the Marlins lose. They are playing the New York Metropolitans in New York, and their losses will help propel the Arizona Diamondbacks into a playoff spot. So by Friday night, I think it's mathematically possible the Diamondbacks may have already clinched that spot. Don't quote me on that. I haven't looked it up, and I'm not going to. They're playing the Houston Astros, who are in a playoff race themselves, so those should be some exciting contests at the end of the season, and I am fortunate enough to attend one of them. And the last but not least, today it's announced that there's a Damian Lillard trade, and I said, who cares? And then I saw it's a three-way trade, and the Phoenix Suns are involved, and I said, oh, DeAndre Ayton's got to be out. And sure enough, DeAndre Ayton was out. I talked about it a couple of times on the podcast. It was never really fully fleshed out, at least in the local media, of which I do follow, what the animosity was between DeAndre Ayton, his teammates, and the coaching staff. Ayton, in my mind, felt like the ball should move through him more often, and he was not happy with A, how frequently he had to pass the ball out of the post, and B, that he wasn't allowed to play his back to the basket as frequently as he wanted. He was being asked to do more of what a center does that is not a primary scorer. He was asked to do a lot of running around in the paint and even out to the three-point line. And yet, on the defensive end, he was being asked to do a lot when it came to boxing out and defensive rebounding. Now, I'm not saying that that's not a proper role for him or that he was somehow being misused in that offense. It was clear from his body language that he thought he was being misused, and he didn't like the way that he was being scapegoated for a lot of the problems in the offense. I use those words intentionally, scapegoated. If you've got a guy who's over 7 feet tall and you're asking him to run around on the offensive end as much as Ayton was asked to do, and then he has to go back and play against a 7-footer on the defensive end who's just going to sit in the post and continue to put his shoulder and ass into him, bang him around all over the paint. That's what she said. You get the point. There was consternation amongst the amongst the teammates on the Phoenix Suns. So Ayton leaving wasn't the worst thing to happen, particularly because they gave him a max contract. The pieces that they brought in, namely Grayson Allen, I think that might be one of the most underrated players in the entire trade. He was a very good buck. He helped spread the floor. He played smart. He played his role. I guess that's probably the better way to say it. He didn't play necessarily smart. He knew what his role was. He realized that on a team full of very, very athletic and semi-superstar point guards that he needed to be a capable, if not great defender, and he needed to be able to spread the floor and hit the three-pointer when necessary. Well, he did that, and he's going to do that, fingers crossed, for the Phoenix Suns. The Suns also get that center, Juric, is that Juric? Something like that. He's much more willing to pass out of the paint than I think Ayton was, although I do believe that Ayton would have passed more out of the paint if he felt like he was more involved in the offense below the rim. Water under the bridge now because he's no longer in Phoenix. But I believe this new guy is going to be much more open to passing out of the paint, and he's also going to be much more open to playing his back to the basket, which I know Coach Frank Vogel will have him doing more of that versus Monty Williams wanting to run his centers all over the court. As far as the chances for the Phoenix Suns, I believe the sky is the limit. This is a very well put together team. I believe they are stacked. I have high hopes for Bradley Beal, although he did not have the most ceremonious exit from Washington. I don't know that many players do, and many players have come to the Valley of the Sun and rejuvenated their careers. With Durant and Booker and all of the other pieces, I believe the Suns are, although in a very, very crowded Western Conference, a very competitive Western Conference, one of the favorites to win the conference. Wow. It's been a while since I felt some optimism as a sports fan, given some of the recent downfalls, failings of the teams that I root for. And no, I'm not a Johnny-come-lately Arizona sports fan. It is nice to see the locals enthused, and I do admire the way that the Arizona Diamondbacks built their team. They brought the kids in, they taught the kids how to play, and now the kids are performing at a high level in the major leagues. And, well, I was never really that committed an NBA fan to the Denver Nuggets. I lived in Denver for 10 years. I rooted for the team while I was there. I left. They were bad. I picked up the Suns because that was the Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire Suns. They're fun to watch. They're still fun to watch. If the Suns lose this season, it's not going to break my heart. If they win, I'll be happy for my fellow Phoenicians who will savor their first NBA championship. This is Why Don't Vote, a podcast.